with the UF IFAS Pesticide Information Office, and our job is to make sure that we have the materials to help applicators get their licenses and then to keep their licenses. So our office works on the training manuals that you read before you took the exam. We're writing the exams. And then the bigger piece of what we do is really try to get information about how to comply with this complex world of pesticides so that you can effectively and safely use these products. So that's through trainings at CEU events. It's writing articles like this, and it's really keeping up to date with all of the changes, and there have been a lot lately, and making sure that we're getting that information out to growers and everybody that uses pesticides.
Great. So you authored an article that's in our May issue of Specialty Crop Grower magazine. So we thought we'd have you on to talk a little bit in more detail about that. And the Endangered Species Act, that's being considered more heavily in the pesticide labels now. Talk a little bit about why that came about and just a little bit of what that looks like.
So you have EPA that does the registering of pesticides, and under FIFRA, their sort of stance is that when you use these products according to the label, it doesn't cause an unreasonable risk of harm to people or the environment. Now, there's a key term there, unreasonable risk, which means EPA says there's a possibility that some kind of harm could occur, but we've minimized it, we've reduced it. The Endangered Species Act says no harm can occur. And so you have these two different acts that have slightly different justifications, and they came crashing into one another in that the FIFRA model for registering pesticides didn't meet, according to a lawsuit, what the Endangered Species Act said. And so EPA was told, you have got to get into compliance. And EPA said, we're trying, but it's really hard and we're behind. In the courts kind of across the country, from different jurisdictions, whatever we think about potential leanings of a court or not, it was pretty unanimous that EPA, you're not in compliance and you need to get into compliance. And so what EPA went back to do was come up with strategies. So that's where we see phrases like herbicide strategy, insecticide strategy, to much more quickly meet the Endangered Species Act, there will be no harm. And now we're starting to see some of those come through. And I know there was a lot of fear early on that, oh, we're going to lose products and products are going to disappear. Now that we're getting into the nuts and bolts of this, and in the article, we really get into there's some new things you need to find on a label, but at the end of the day, most of what's coming out, at least thus far, is you just keep farming the way you farmed because we already are protecting the environment and people by following the labels. So EPA, I think, really just said we're going to put a few things in place that everybody kind of looks and goes, we like this. We feel like this protects species, which is important. We think of the some of the farmers that were around maybe in the 70s or 80s when bald eagles were really on the struggle. Now you see them quite regularly. So it is important to protect these species. And I'll give EPA some credit here. I think they've done a lot to make this much easier to comply with than maybe we thought originally.
Right. So how long have you been working on this?
So on the endangered species end of it,
Yes.
probably 2 to 3 years when a lot of this information started coming out. And a lot of it was unknown. And as we've gotten closer and closer and we've seen what EPA is doing, it's starting to make some sense. There's still some unknown out there that we don't have a tremendous number of products that have all of this language. In fact, to date, we really only have one, and that's the one that we use in the article to walk through. But I would anticipate many of our products are going to be very similar to what we've seen in that product.
Great. Great. So I know, as this becomes real for growers and applicators, what are some resources that they can tap into to learn more about this and to be sure that they're in compliance?
I mean, as our office always says, stay in contact with your specialist at UF and your county extension faculty, your county extension agents. I've been putting out resources for them to be aware of this. stay in contact with publications like this one that gives you some of the key information, and then connecting to our office. We actually have some videos that walk through how to do some of this that will be referenced in a forthcoming article in the same magazine. And they're very digestible. These are like 2-minute videos that can really give you pieces of this, and it'll all be in a nice playlist labeled in a way that you go, gosh, I forgot what the mitigation points were. Where do I find that? Ah, here's where I find that. Here's a little video. Should serve as a good example moving forward. So stay in contact with your county extension, stay in contact with our office, and stay plugged in with your grower groups like you have here, because we're putting out information as fast as we can to try to keep you up to speed.
Great. We'll have you back on in June to talk about part 2 of the series that you wrote for us. We did see that the insecticide strategy has just dropped. I know. I mean, it's very new. Just any comments on that?
We'll dig into that just like we did with herbicide strategy when it was real and final, and then keep up to date with EPA to see what that really looks like. And then my goal is always from that applicator perspective, how do you find it on a label? How do you understand what it's telling you to do? And how do you get out there using these products so that you're compliant and still effective with what you're trying to do in the field? So we'll keep making whatever resources we can, videos, handouts to keep everybody up to speed.
Great. Well, with that, we'll let you go unless you have anything else to add. Look forward to chatting with you next month.
Sounds fantastic.